Jason Dickinson, Landon Slaggert, and Petr Mrazek carry the Blackhawks to a 3-1 win over the Calgary Flames. And on today's episode, I'll be getting into my key takeaways from the Blackhawks' second consecutive victory, and also discuss all the Hawks prospects taking part in the OHL Playoffs. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2, and make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey as well, so that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And just a quick reminder to everyone watching this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff really does help me grow the show tremendously. If you're tuning in through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please make sure you're constantly downloading all of those latest episodes, rate and review the podcast as well. And I also got to let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Make sure to go and download the Game Time app right now and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Hey, what a win out of our Blackhawks last night, defeating the Calgary Flames 3-1 to take the best of 3-game season series. They now have won back-to-back games here for the second time in the month of March. That was a feat that they had only accomplished once prior to this month. And I've talked a lot on the show recently about how, yes, the Blackhawks, I'm sure, would love to wind up with Macklin Celebrini, but I don't think that's the focal point. Finishing in last place in the NHL standings, I don't think that's priority number one on the Blackhawks list. Rather, I think that's actually wrapping up this season on a high note to carry some momentum going into the offseason. And yeah, the Blackhawks have still had a few stinkers over the last couple of weeks, a pair of them against the Kings, a real bad one against the Ducks. But they have been playing some better hockey here for the most part, and they've quietly won 6 of their last 10 games, and they're now 6-6-0 here in the month of March. And man, is it just a lot more fun to come and jump on this podcast and talk Blackhawks hockey after they get a win. And last night was a pretty solid performance all in all. If you go and look at some of the underlying numbers in the analytics, it would suggest that Calgary had a huge advantage in most of the categories, but honestly, that kind of came out of desperation in the latter half of the second period and mostly in the third when Calgary was down by 3 or down by 2 and just trying to storm their way back. But even when that was the case, I thought the Blackhawks didn't give up very many high danger opportunities. They didn't force Petr Mrazek to bail them out, making big time save after big time save. Yes, he was fantastic and he wound up stopping 39 of the 40 shots that he faced, but I wouldn't necessarily call this a goalie win, although the numbers may suggest that, and we've seen Petr Mrazek, do that time and time again this season. But I thought the biggest difference to me in this game from the Blackhawks was really the first period, and it's been such an issue for this team all year long, but particularly since the NHL All-Star break. Last night, the Blackhawks held the lead 2-0 after the first period. That was just the second time they've had the lead after 20 minutes in 22 games since the NHL All-Star break. That's simply not good enough. And I mentioned a lot how this Blackhawks team, even though we have seen them win in comeback fashion a few times here in the month of March, they're not built for that. That's not how they want to be playing. They don't want to be having to come from behind night in and night out. And actually going and holding the lead after the first period, it's no surprise to me that the result wound up being what it was when the Blackhawks put forth a really good effort from the opening faceoff. And it seems like Luke Richardson's bag skate on Monday to kind of let the guys know, hey, yeah, we came out with a win in San Jose, but that was still a pretty disastrous road trip. And against anyone else other than the Sharks, the Blackhawks probably wind up losing that game. So the effort level wasn't good enough on the West Coast road trip, but nice to see the Blackhawks respond the way they did right off the bat in this game against the Calgary Flames. The other biggest difference to me was the trio of Landon Slaggert, Jason Dickinson, and Joey Anderson, because after Seth Jones scored the opening goal of the game on the power play, that was easily the Hawks' most effective line the rest of the way, and they were the ones that contributed to the final 2 goals, the game winner, and got the Blackhawks enough support offensively to go and earn 2 points in this one. And for Jason Dickinson, he winds up with the game winner. He scored a pair of goals in this one, his 19th and 20th goals of the season. And man, what a year it has been for Jason Dickinson. Got himself a contract extension here with the Blackhawks, is really taken on a leadership role this season. And with Connor Murphy out, he's been the guy who's been rocking the third A most nights for the Blackhawks. He's just taken on a new role this year, and he honestly looks like a different type of player. And the defensive side of things, he was really good with the Blackhawks in those areas last year, but he's really turned himself into a nice two-way player, and he now hits the 20-goal plateau for the first time in his NHL career. Huge shout out and congratulations to Jason Dickinson. In his own words, he said that was a massive accomplishment. I know he's super hyped to hit that goal, and hopefully he can. I don't know if he's going to be a repeat 20-goal scorer, but hopefully he'll be able to impact the game on both ends of the ice like he has this season over the next couple of years for the Blackhawks after getting that contract extension. Huge night out of Jason Dickinson. Hits 20 goals after his previous career high in a single season was 9. I also, though, got to give a huge shout out to Landon Slaggert. As I mentioned, playing with Jason Dickinson and Joey Anderson, getting an opportunity on that trio with Colin Blackwell, unfortunately out of the lineup right now due to injury, but I mean, that line hasn't skipped a beat with Landon Slaggert on that wing. He has kind of fit in perfectly. The speed, the tenacity, the ability to play hard along the boards. He plays physical. He's not afraid of battles. And this is what I talked about when Slaggert signed his ELC from Notre Dame. What can we expect from him? Good, hard, two-way play, not afraid to go to the dirty areas, and we finally see him make his mark on the score sheet. He picks up his first 2 NHL assists, the first of which was a beautiful exit pass out of the defensive zone to lead Anderson and Dickinson for a 2-on-1, and the puck found its way into the back of the net, and then some great work down low to pick up the secondary assist on Jason Dickinson's second goal of the game. So congratulations to Slags for picking up his first 2 NHL points. Was so close to netting his first career NHL goal. Had it hit off of a defender's leg with a wide open cage, and then it actually looked like he had his first NHL tally. The Blackhawks were celebrating. The goal horn went off. And unfortunately, upon replay, it was clear that the puck hit the post and did not cross the line. So had to be a little tough for Landon Slaggert having those prime scoring opportunities and having neither of them go in the back of the net. But I'll tell you what, he keeps playing like that. That first NHL goal is going to come in no time. And then kind of the forgotten man on that line, because Dickinson was great. Landon Slaggert as a rookie really is going to catch the headlines. Joey Anderson had himself a phenomenal game as well. 2 primary assists, also added a couple of hits as well. He now has 14 points in 45 games this season, and I'm really interested to see what the Blackhawks are going to do with their forward group in the offseason, because I don't want to say it's set in stone that Joey Anderson is going to be cracking the lineup, because we saw him play really well late in the year last year with Boris Kachuk and Jujhar Khaira. That's kind of crazy to think that was a line only a year ago for the Blackhawks. And then he didn't make the team out of training camp in the fall, but with the way he's played all season long and how he's been a defensive anchor, he set himself up nicely to potentially make the Blackhawks roster again next year, but it's all going to come down to whether or not he has a good camp. But he's made the most of his opportunity for sure this year. As I mentioned, Petr Mrazek, I think he's not the number 1 star of the game, but he has to be one of the top 3, because he held down the fort all night long, especially when the Canucks were coming with their best charges late in the game. Unfortunately, his shutout bid got ruined with 7 minutes to go, but still comes out with the victory, and was one of his better performances in quite a while after he had a little bit of a skittish streak there. Felt like Mrazek really settled things down and got back on his A game last night. Seth Jones, also worthy of a shout out, found the back of the net again last night to kick off the scoring for the Blackhawks. That's his 7th goal of the season and his 6th in the last 10 games. And it's just so evident the difference in mentality that Seth has. And even when they're not going in, you can just tell how he's really trying to get the puck on net every time he basically has it. And over his last 10 games, he's recorded at least 4 shots on goal in 7 of them. So that change in mentality seems to be working nicely. Felt like for a while there, it was going to be a poor offensive season in terms of the goal scoring for Seth after he potted 12 last year. Only had 1 goal in his first 31 games. I want to say he now has 7 on the year, and hopefully he'll be able to keep that hot stretch up, And then Connor Bedard, got to talk about the boy. What a first period Bedsy had. I know he only winds up with a secondary assist in this game that now gives him 56 points in 58 games on the year. Still, by far, the leading rookie point scorer. But the first period, it was really clear that he had some extra juice and what was really taking the game over, especially on that power play that led to Seth Jones's goal. In the first period, Bedard had 8 shot attempts. 4 of them wound up on net. The Blackhawks had a 5-0 high danger chance advantage in all situations with him on the ice, a 9-2 scoring chance advantage. Bedard had 5 individual scoring chances in the opening 20 minutes, along with a penalty drawn. Even though it didn't lead to like a goal, a sick highlight, or a primary assist or anything, the talent is still so evident. And he faded a little bit as the night went on, but nice to see other members of the Blackhawks be able to kind of pick things up offensively to get the Blackhawks enough. And then Philip Kurashev, man, I know it's a talking point a lot here on the show, but he continues to just be so good. Another primary assist last night on Seth Jones' goal. That gives him 47 points now through 65 games. And I've been mentioning this on Twitter and on the show. I don't expect Kurashev to hit 60 points, but he's now got 15 points over his last 12 games over the point per game clip. He's 13 shy of 60 with 10 games left. I don't expect him to hit 60, but boy, if he does, that would be absolutely bananas after his career high in points was 25 the year prior. Regardless if it's 55, 57, 60, whatever it may be, Kurashev just remains outstanding. And I had someone in the comment section, it really felt exactly how I feel about Kurashev's development this year. Yes, you can attribute some of the points to Connor Bedard, but there's no denying the confidence, the speed, and the elusiveness through transition, the high hockey IQ. He's really putting it all together, and that was kind of the thing about Kurashev. We had seen the skills, we had seen the tools. He just hadn't been able to utilize all of that on a consistent basis. He's been really consistent here, particularly over the last 3 months. He's been excellent. Pleasantly surprised with the offensive outburst that Philip Kurashev has had this season. Going to be fun to see if he can wind up with 60 points on the year with 10 games left to go in the season. All right, there are my thoughts from the Blackhawks. 3-1 win over the Calgary Flames last night. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I still have to get into all the Hawks prospects that are going to be taking part in the OHL playoffs. But first, I need to talk to you all about Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Connor Bedard looks like he's going to be winning the Calder Trophy for the NHL's Rookie of the Year. Austin Matthews is going to be winning the Rocket Richard Trophy. He just potted number 59 last night. 9 games to go on the season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Man, would I love to see him go on a run for 70. And how about the Boston Bruins? Looks like they're going to be in the mix to win the President's Trophy this year. And you could be winning alongside all of them by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL network. And Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you have the chance to win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. And it's so simple. All you have to do is select whether studs like Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, or Connor Bedard are going to record more or less than their Sleeper projections for goals, assists, points, shots on goal, plus minus, and more in any given game. And again, Sleeper offers you the chance to win 100 times your cash. So start paying attention, make the right picks, and you could be winning real big. And right now, can also go and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get up to an $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get up to an $100 match on your first deposit. And you can go and see Sleeper's terms of use, right now if you're wanting to get more details. Segment 2, not only does the NCAA tournament begin on Thursday this week, make sure to go and check out yesterday's episode for a complete breakdown on all of that, all the Blackhawks prospects that are going to be taking part in the tournament and who and when they're going to be playing in the first round when things kick off tomorrow. But also, the OHL playoffs begin tomorrow afternoon as well, and most of the Blackhawks prospects that they have playing junior hockey up in the CHL are actually in the Ontario Hockey League. The only one that isn't, I believe, I don't think the Hawks have any prospects in the WHL. The only one that they have in the queue is Samuel Savoie, who has now returned from his fractured tibia that he suffered in the preseason and is putting together a nice little run here at the end of the season for the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies. But other than that, all of the Blackhawks prospects that are playing in the CHL are about to get underway in the OHL playoffs, and I figure it would be fun to go through some of those matchups, how these Blackhawks prospects have been faring, and when they're going to be getting underway and playing postseason hockey. So getting into it, the 5 Blackhawks prospects that are going to be playing in the OHL playoffs are Paul Ludwinski, Gavin Hayes, Nick Lardis, Martin Misiak, and Alex Ferrand. First, starting with the Western Conference in the OHL, the Sioux Greyhounds are going to be playing the Guelph Storm. The Greyhounds are the 3 seed in the West. The Storm are the 6 seed. And game 1 of this series is tomorrow, March 28th. Gavin Hayes, of course, is a member of the Sioux Greyhounds after being traded there midway through the season from the Flint Firebirds. He was the 66th overall selection for the Hawks in the 2022 NHL draft, a 3rd-round pick. And boy, what a season he has had. After potting 40 goals for the Flint Firebirds this last season, he was spectacular once again for both of those squads, and combined for 76 points, 37 goals, and 39 assists in 55 games this season, and had 40 points in 28 games, 18 goals, and 22 assists in 28 games after being traded to Sioux, and still only 19 years old. He's going to be turning 20 this May. Really curious, and I do believe he is going to be making the leap to professional hockey after what he's shown in junior the last 2 years, and also the performance that he had to help the United States win the gold medal at the World Junior Championships. So will be fun to see Hayes and the Sioux Greyhounds take on Guelph starting tomorrow afternoon. And then also in the West, we have the 4-seeded Kitchener Rangers versus the 5-seeded Erie Otters. Game 1 of that series is going to be on Friday, not Thursday. And of course, playing for the Erie Otters is Blackhawks 2023 second-round pick Martin Misiak, Mr. Mishiks, the 55th overall selection. Has been kind of bumped all over the lineup for the Otters this season. He's played top line center. He's played third line center. He's played on the wing from time to time. Based on the conversation that I had with Hadi Kalakash, and given the Blackhawks center depth that they have in their organization, I do feel it's more likely that Misiak is going to be playing the wing. He's a good defensive player, good two-way player. I just don't know if he has the playmaking ability to be a really good puck-moving center iceman at the NHL level. And I think he also is just as capable as of a goal scorer as he is a playmaker. And that usually sets up better for guys to be on the wing. So for multiple different reasons, wouldn't be surprised to see Misiak, if he does reach the NHL level, or even whenever he makes the leap to professional hockey, wouldn't be surprised to see him move to a winger full-time. But so far this season, in his first OHL campaign, 47 points in 60 games for the Otters, 23 goals and 24 assists. Like Gavin Hayes, he also is still 19 years old, even though he was part of this year's draft, but he's actually not all that much younger than Gavin Hayes or Paul Ludwinski, who I'll be getting into here in just a second, as Misiak turns 20 in September and was one of the older players in last year's NHL draft. So that'll do it for the West. The Sioux Greyhounds taking on the Guelph Storm. Game 1 of that series is tomorrow, and then the Kitchener Rangers taking on Martin Misiak and the Erie Otters begins on Friday. Going out to the Eastern Conference in the OHL, we got the 2-seeded North Bay Battalion taking on the 7-seeded Kingston Frontenacs, with Game 1 of that series kicking off tomorrow night. And of course, Paul Ludwinski, he's been the captain for the Frontenacs each of the last 2 years. Second round selection for the Blackhawks in 2022, 39th overall, which, you know, kind of looking back at things, and I get 2022 was not nearly as deep of a draft as 2023, it still does feel like 39th overall was a bit high for Paul Ludwinski, especially considering what he did in his first season after being drafted, but he really responded nicely in all areas of his game this season for the France. Tallied 69 points in 60 games this season, 23 goals and 46 assists, and he nearly doubled his production. He only had 34 points in 47 games last year, and out of those 34 points, he only had 9 goals. So the goal scoring took a huge uptick. The playmaking took a huge uptick. And he still provides that same motor, that same energy, that same type of hustle that you want to see. He's a guy who doesn't take off shifts, a guy who brings the energy night in and night out, and also provides that captain mentality, which you love to see out of prospects at a young age. So Paulie Luds is obviously going to be a huge part of the Kingston Frontenac's run, however long it may be. And similar to Gavin Hayes, would not be surprised whatsoever if this winds up being his final junior campaign. He is eligible to go back. You can be 20 and still play in junior. Each team can have 3 20-year-olds, I believe, but I think the Blackhawks have seen enough out of Ludwinski this year to want to get him ready to go make the jump to pro hockey. He also turns 20 here in the month of April. The next series is a really interesting one for us Blackhawks fans because the 3-seeded Brantford Bulldogs take on the 6-seeded Ottawa 67s. Game 1 of that series kicks off on Friday. And of course, Nick Lardis is a member of the Brantford Bulldogs, formerly known as the Hamilton Bulldogs. Some of you may be confused out there saying Brantford. I don't remember that being an OHL team. They made that change recently. But anyways, Nick Lardis was a huge part of the Bulldogs' success early on in the season, but we haven't seen him for the last month plus due to a wrist injury, unfortunately. And he was absolutely cooking before having to miss time as he tallied 50 points in his first 37 games, 29 goals in those 37 games, along with 21 assists, really picking up where he left off the year prior. Once he got traded to Brantford, did not get off to a good start to his season, but once he got traded to the Bulldogs, finished the year with 46 points, 25 goals, and 21 assists in 33 games. Not a lot of size there for Nick Lardis. That's always going to be the knock on him, but boy, does he have natural goal scoring ability. He knows how to go to the right areas. He finds those open spots on the ice with ease, and he's got a really impressive shot, and also combines that with some really good speed. He plays the style that the NHL has kind of turned into these last few years. Skill and speed. That's the name of the game for Nick Lardis. It sounds like the expectation is for him to be fully healthy and ready to go when game 1 of the series kicks off on Friday, but we won't know for sure until the Bulldogs release their lineup. But would be awesome to see Nick Lardis be able to return and play some big-time hockey down the stretch of the season. And then last but certainly not least, the 4-seeded Mississauga Steelheads, where Rockford IceHogs defenseman Ethan Del Mastro used to be the captain a few years ago. They're taking on the Sudbury Wolves, the 5-seed out in the East. Game 1 of that series kicks off tomorrow night as well. And Alex Ferrand is a member of the Sudbury Wolves. They've been absolutely led by Quentin Musty and Dalibor Dvorsky this year. It's funny because I follow all of these teams on X and I kind of keep up with what they're doing. And Alex Ferrand, by the way, not an offensive weapon. There was a reason he was the 99th overall selection in last year's draft. And he had 30 points in 68 games this year. Mostly used as a third line type of player, but offense is never his bread and butter. It's the power forward mold that he could play, being a big body in front of the net, playing a two-way game. There's not a lot of glitz or glamour there with Alex Ferrand in the style that he plays, but keeping up with the Sudbury Wolves and following them on X, Dalibor Dvorsky and Quentin Musty have been going absolutely bananas for that team. I mean, like every goal they score, Dale is involved in the goal somehow. Quentin Musty is putting up video game numbers, a prospect for the San Jose Sharks. It's been fun to kind of watch those two absolutely cook from afar. But back to Alex Ferrand, like I said, 30 points in 68 games this year, 17 goals and 13 assists. A lot of his goals come from the gritty areas, a little similar to Landon Slaggert. It's kind of like driving the net and finding rebounds or stuffing home loose pucks. It's kind of the name of the game for Alex Ferrand. But it was a little bit of a down year for him after he tallied 39 points in 67 games last year, only had 30 and 68 this year in his third full OHL season. Still is a pretty young guy for being in last year's draft, though. He just turned 19 years old back in January, and the expectation 100% is for him to go back to Sudbury next season and hopefully have a little bit of a better campaign. But There is everything you need to know about all of the Blackhawks prospects that are going to be taking part in the OHL Playoffs, which, like the NCAA tournament, kick off tomorrow. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I wrap things up, I still have to talk about Jiri Felcman, a third-round pick in the 2023 NHL Draft, joining the Rockford IceHogs on an ATO for the remainder of the season. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, if you're watching right now on YouTube and haven't done so already, do me a huge favor, like, comment, subscribe, all that. It's 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does help me out tremendously as I'm trying to grow the show as we creep towards the summer months. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, some IceHogs news came out yesterday as it was announced that Blackhawks 2023 third-round pick, 93rd overall selection, Jiri Felcman has signed an amateur tryout with the Rockford IceHogs. Honestly, with Felcman playing overseas, I really haven't gotten a good look at him at all this year. I don't really know what he has to offer, to be truthful, but he is a 6'4", 200-pound center, still only 18 years old. He'll turn 19 here in a couple of weeks in April. Got his feet wet a little bit in the National League over in Switzerland, which is the top league over there. Played in 5 games, tallying 1 assist, but he spent most of his time playing in the U20 Swiss League, and he's been a really effective player there at 18 years of age, so playing against some older competition. Nearly a point per game player for Lagnau U20, tallying 8 goals and 15 assists for 23 points in 26 games this season. But now he's going to be with Rockford for the remainder of the season, and feels like this is kind of similar to what happened with Gavin Hayes last year. The Blackhawks organization just wants to get their hands on these guys as early as possible, wants to get them under their control a little bit, see where their game's at, and just get them acclimated to the style of play, what it's like in North America playing pro hockey. Obviously, for someone like Felcman coming over from Europe, he's going to be playing on smaller ice. I think it's a wise idea to get him acclimated a little bit more. However, I do want to preface that, according to Scott Powers of The Athletic, Felcman isn't likely to appear in any IceHogs games anytime soon, but the Blackhawks just, again, wanted to give him experience practicing with the team, giving him experience with the North American ice and the style of play. Maybe he winds up getting into the lineup for a game or two. I doubt it, because he's only on an amateur tryout here, but they just clearly want him around, and I think it's just setting up a little bit of a bridge in the future for Jiri Felcman. The expectation, though, is for him to return back to Switzerland next year. Like I mentioned, he's been playing mostly in the U20 league this season, but it sounds like he's going to get an opportunity as a 19-year-old next year to play full-time in the National League, like I referenced, the top division, top professional league over there in Switzerland. So I think that'll be getting him these practice reps will kind of help him get ready for that next step next year. And then I'm sure the hope is once he completes next season in the National League, then he'll come back over to the Rockford IceHogs full time. But we'll be curious to see. I also just want to learn a little bit more about Felcman. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see any game action out of him, but might have to have Mike Folta, the Rockford IceHogs play-by-play broadcaster, come on and tell me what he's thought about seeing Felcman in practice. But while we're talking about the IceHogs here, I figured I'd give you all a little bit of an update as to how things have been going for them recently. They've been absolutely cooking, baby, and it's got me pumped up. They're playing their best hockey at the most meaningful part of the season, and currently they have gotten themselves into third place in the AHL Central Division standings. They currently have 65 points through 59 games. They got 13 games to go left on the schedule, As a reminder, the AHL has 72 game seasons, and how the playoffs work, at least for the Central Division, 5 of the 8 teams will qualify for the Calder Cup playoffs. However, the 4th and 5th seeds will duke it out in a best-of-3 play-in series, with the winner going on to play the number 3 seed in a best-of-5 series in the following round. So there's a huge difference between finishing in the 3 spot and the 4 spot. If you finish number 3, you also get home ice advantage in that first round best-of-5 series. So it's been awesome to see the IceHogs claw their way up to that number 3 spot. They are currently 1 point only ahead of the Texas Stars, a team that they've faced in the last 2 years in the Calder Cup playoffs. But the Stars, they have 64 points, like I said, 1 game back. But they have played 3 more games than the IceHogs. They only have 10 games to go on their schedule. The IceHogs play tonight against the Chicago Wolves, who have been struggling this year. Would be huge if they could come away with 2 points and kind of widen that gap a little bit more with the Stars. And then in the 5th spot is the Manitoba Moose. I thought I'd mention them just because if the IceHogs do wind up getting the 4 seed, that's probably the team that they're going to be playing in the first round. Or if they get the 3 seed, Texas and Manitoba are likely to face, and who knows who comes out of that series. The IceHogs could be taking on any of them, but Manitoba currently has 58 points. They're 6 points back of Texas and 7 points back of the IceHogs through 61 games, as they have 11 games left on their schedule. The IceHogs, I do want to make sure to mention, the 2 seed isn't like a foregone conclusion, but it's probably out of reach at this point in time, as they're 8 points back for second place with 13 games to go on the schedule. So 3rd seed feels like the best available spot that they could finish in the standings. And like I said, it would be huge if they could miss out on that best-of-3 play-in series for the first time in the last 3 years, and also have home ice advantage for that first round series, whoever they take on. I do want to mention, though, it's not a cupcake schedule for the IceHogs here in these final 13 games, as they still have 4 tilts left with the Milwaukee Admirals, the top team in the Central Division and one of the top teams in all of the AHL. They have Yaroslav Askarov in net, who's one of the best goalie prospects in all of the world. And then they also have 3 games against the Grand Rapids Griffins. Sebastian Casa, they also got some pretty good netminders down there. Grand Rapids is the second best team in the division that the IceHogs are currently 8 points back of. So out of their 13 games, over half of them are against the top 2 teams in the Central Division. Those are going to be some meaningful tilts. So even though the IceHogs have been cooking well here as of late, they still got to get the job done over these next couple of weeks to avoid playing in that best-of-3 play-in series for a 3rd consecutive year. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show, and make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe for Celebrini. Subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe, that tells me you don't want the Blackhawks to have Macklin Celebrini, and who wouldn't want that? So make sure to go and hit that subscribe button, and that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it's uploaded to YouTube each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Do me a favor, go and also give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman 2, and make sure to go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow with definitely a preview of the tilt against the Ottawa Senators. Not sure exactly what's going to be coming up, but it's going to be a good show. Stay tuned for that. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.